Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Just a Person podcast, a show that explores life's highs, lows, and in-betweens. I'm Madison, and this week I sat down with Haley and Laurabeth. We talked about what their households were like growing up, who they think they're the most like in their families, and whether or not they would change anything about their childhood. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Madison. Hi, Laurabeth.
Welcome, Haley and Laurabeth, to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So just for a bit of context, Laurabeth is married to my cousin Josh, and I've known Haley since we were like 12. We went to school together, just so we have a little background on that. But before we get started talking about what we're going to talk about, I'm going to pick a question, and we're all going to answer it. It can be anything. It's a random question, so just prepare yourselves.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Would you like to pick the question?
Yeah, sure.
All right,
Thanks
so reach right in there.
Most embarrassing moment. Right.
We were talking about this yesterday, actually, so I have mine top of mind if you would like me to go first.
I'm going to have to think about it.
Go ahead, because I don't want to say the one that I mentioned yesterday.
So mine, and this maybe doesn't seem embarrassing, but to me, it's something I look back on and I feel embarrassed still that it happened. I was in a college class. It was my second to last exam ever in college. And do you know this story?
I know this
story. So I was in the middle. It was like a lecture hall. And you know how lecture halls, they have like the side desk that like flips up. I was sitting there, and on my left, there was like 3 girls. And on my right, there's a football player that usually sat there. But these particular rows were incredibly narrow. Like I'm 5'2", and my knees were like up in my chest. So this guy is obviously over 6 feet tall, and he always comes in late. So he's like 5-10 minutes late to the exam. I finished mine before him, and I'm like, all right, should I go left and climb over 3 people, or right and just this one guy? So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the right. So I try to walk past him, and he could have just stood up. He was at the end of the row. He could have stood in the aisle, but he made no effort to move. I got my backpack on. I tried to like step over him, but I stepped on his feet and I fell into the aisle.
Oh, gosh.
And it's dead silent. Everybody's staring at me, and I'm laying on my back like a turtle. I just laid there until my professor walked all the way from the front to the back of the room and like held me up and took my exam, and I left. And I just feel so mortified that happened. I didn't know the guy. He didn't even look at me. He just let me lay there, and he kept taking his exam. And I was like, this could have all been fun.
Well, I was going to say, I can't believe the professor had to be the person to any people in that front row.
No one moved to help you.
Literally, I was like almost in the back of the room, and he walked all the way up there, and I was just laying there. I was like, I probably broke my computer. I'm embarrassed. Like, that was my moment.
Yeah, you probably should have picked the 3 girls.
I know, they probably would have moved.
Yeah, at least like shifted their leg.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have to tell the one I told you about. Yeah.
All right.
So I'm in town visiting. So me and Madison were talking last night with a group of the cousins. But basically, I grew up way out in the country, and
She's from Arkansas. You
yeah.
can't tell she has a bit of an accent.
Okay,
yeah. So we grew up on quite a bit of acreage, and then like the people next to us had a bunch as well. So we go hiking all the time. Well, my sister's boyfriend at the time, now husband, was there, and I was a little kid, 9 or 10, and I didn't ever want to look stupid like in front of him, because you're a little kid and you look up to this guy that's dating your sister. I thought he was really cool. Well, he is like a nature freak, like he knows everything about all the nature stuff. And we were going hiking, and I saw this gray rock on the ground, like a perfectly round gray rock. And there was like hair or grass like growing out of the rock. And I said to Dustin, that was the guy dating my sister, I was like, Dustin, look, here's this rock with hair coming out of it. And he said, Laurabeth, that's coyote poop. so embarrassed. I just dropped it. I'm like, and moving on. I remember that like yesterday. And that is really what comes to my mind every time I think of embarrassment moment. My family still reminds me of it. Like, oh yeah. So that's fine. And that's it.
Oh boy. I don't have like a most embarrassing moment. I do have one like recently, I guess. Then I'll just say that one. But I mean, this is like a work story, I guess. But
Oh, okay.
I worked, I think it was just last week. And when we do like report between the shift changes, we talk about the patients. And I guess back and forth through like our shift changes on this particular patient, we'll just say, oh, like whoever's like at the bedside, like, oh, yeah, like husband's at the bedside or whatever. And this was a guy and we kept saying wife was at the bedside and it was his mom. So
Yeah.
that was embarrassing because I'm pretty sure someone had told me and then I like said it and then I like had learned later that it was his mom. No one like called me out or anything, but I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Told her wife, that's okay.
I mean, that's tough. You like, you don't
Yeah.
want to assume anything, but
Yeah.
all right. So Laura Beth just told us a nice story about her growing up, which ties in with our topic today. We're talking about families. So Haley is an only child, and Laura Beth is one of how many?
9.
9
Yeah, 9
kids.
children. Yeah.
So I guess Haley, let's start with you. Can you just give us, I mean, don't go like too in depth right now, but what I guess was your life like growing up?
Life growing up. So yeah, being an only child, it was just me and my parents. Sometimes we had a dog, but it was just us three. It was just like a lot of just me and my parents for everything. Trying to like look back, I think it was pretty lonely. Sounds kind of sad to say, but I did luckily have like cousins around my age on both sides of my family. So I think my parents kind of like picked up like, oh, she's kind of alone, only child. So we would spend a lot of time with cousins on my mom's side, on my dad's side. But yeah, I feel like I just got really close to my parents. I mean, kind of by default, but it was just always us hanging out, us on trips. Got a lot of attention as a kid, my whole life. Positives and negative aspects of both, but it's been pretty good though. I don't know. Pretty close with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You said you did hang out with cousins a lot.
Yes, I did. I had a few on my mom's side, and on my dad's side, it was, I don't know, I had a few they were all older, but I'm actually closer in age with their kids. They're all a little bit younger than me, but I have one cousin that's like 4 years younger. It's her kid technically, but yeah, closer with her. So I had a little bit of, kind of my siblings in a way.
All right, Laura Beth, what was it like growing up with 8 siblings? What did you have? So you had like 11 people in your house.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were 11 people. My oldest sister did get married when I was 10, so for a while it was less than 9, at least as far as I remember. But yeah, for the most part, it was always really loud. It's funny because hang out with other friends and be like, why are you talking so loud? But I guess because you had to yell over everybody to have your voice heard.
Survival.
Yeah. But it really was great. Like people, when they hear that I'm from a big family, they ask like, oh, like, how was that? Like there must have been so much drama going on because there's 7 girls and only 2 boys. But honestly, like it was really fun. I don't really remember anything negative as far as the big family goes. We didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't like everyone had like private lessons or got to do a lot of special stuff just then. If we did anything, it was always as a family, and it was usually the less expensive route just because, you really could not, but couldn't afford it to do anything super special for each kid as far as expenses go. But yeah, even though I had 8 siblings, I was close to all of them. Usually the ones you're closer to are the ones closer to your age. So like my younger sister right below me and my older sister right above me, those two growing up, I probably hung out the most with them. Still really close to my mom because she was always home and dad was always working. Well, not always, but more than her. So yeah, definitely close to all my siblings, a lot of fun, but yeah, it was good.
What number are you?
Number 5, so
Okay.
right smack dab in the middle.
Right. Okay.
Because good, because you can be like hang out with the little kids or the big kids.
How did you get around? Did you have a big van?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had this white 12-passenger van, and we'd go places, and people be like, "Do you use buses outside?" I'm like, "That's ours." And I mean, I didn't think of it as a bus, I didn't see a big yellow school bus, but yeah, people would refer to it as the white bus in the parking lot. That was ours, yeah. We had that for a long time.
Haley, do you think that being an only child influenced the way that you view your friendships, or do you feel like having cousins that you were close with made it feel more like you had siblings? So it was just kind of, do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, were you closer with your friends because you didn't have siblings, or did your cousins kind of fill that role?
They kind of filled that role, I think, when I was younger. I mean, I can't even remember all the little friends I had when I was young, but I didn't have like a close friend that I completely grew up with. Honestly, those were like my cousins. But I think when I grew up, like getting older, we moved when I was like 7, turning 8. So not far, just like a different city in Michigan. But I just felt like being further from my cousins, I needed to obviously make friends and then picking those friends and like making friends. I felt like in my head, I tried to like kind of take it seriously, just like being like, who do I really want to spend time with? Because I'm like, I have to pick these people, like siblings or cousins, like always someone to fall back on, to hang out with. Really was like, okay, I need to pick someone I really like hang out with, similar interests, which kind of goes with any friend you pick, but getting close to someone and like having like lasting friendships. I felt like I really tried to make a good connection there. So I wouldn't be alone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, as like a 7 or 8-year-old, that's pretty intuitive.
Yeah.
You knew you had to.
Yeah, I mean, I tried, and it was moving schools too, so I felt like I was so, like, shy and, like, I just gotta be friendly to everybody, but then having, like, a certain friend, like, actually connecting with someone, I was like, "Okay, now I have a friend, I can hang out with them."
What about you, Laura Beth? I mean, you had a house full of people. Did you guys bring like your friends around a lot? Were there always just like outside of your family, was there always just tons of other people there? Or did you guys prefer going other places where there was less people?
Well, it's interesting you ask about friends, and you're mentioning, like, Haley having, like, your cousins nearby and stuff. Well, I actually grew up next to a big family of cousins, and they had 10 kids, and so it was our family of 9 and their family of 10 right down the little path in the woods and down the road. There was one girl in that family who was my age, and we were, like, best friends. So when I think about relationship with friends, it was still family, but, with her, I remember, when I wanted to hang out with her, I would just sneak down to her house and, like, knock on her window and play dolls with her in her house. I never really wanted my younger sister to come because I'm like, "I'm with her all the time." Like, I wanna be with Sarah, that was my cousin. But honestly, I didn't really have a lot of friends outside of my siblings and that cousin because you had so many friends within your family. It's like, "Oh, I don't really need anybody else. I have plenty." So I think later on, getting older and going to college, it was kind of hard for me to make, like, close friendships because I'm like, "They're not family, like, I can't be close to them." And I think, like, looking back on my college years, I wish I had made closer friends, which I did still make, like, a couple really good friends in the end, but it took a while. Like, my senior year is when I was finally like, "Man, they're a good friend." But it took a while to make good friendships because they weren't family, and I felt like, well, they'll never be close because 'cause they're not family. So, kind of positive and negative because I love my family so much, but don't really have a lot of other friends outside of family.
Did you go to school or were you homeschooled?
Homeschooled.
Okay. And you lived surrounded by your family pretty much, right? Like
Yeah.
in a area. So okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's out in the country, only neighbors were cousins, that big family, and then my siblings.
I think about this a lot in my own personal life, but who do you guys think you're most like in your family? It could be your parents, your cousins, your grandparents, whatever, aunts, uncles. But who do you think that you're most like?
I don't know if I'm like anyone from like my extended family at all. I mean, it's kind of boring, but I think I'm kind of like a good split of my parents. I would say I can see certain characteristics of them and me, especially now, like growing up and kind of just being an adult. But yeah, I think it is kind of a hard question to answer, not having siblings. And also just like looking back, like when I was a kid, I don't really know if I was really like my dad when I was like 13, but I don't know. Yeah, I would say I'm just kind of a split between them, like the two of them. So
I mean, that makes sense. The 2 people you're around.
Yeah, yeah. I could definitely even being around them so much, just those 2, I can see, like, a lot of maybe not actions, but just little things I do that I'm like, "Oh, kinda like my dad."
Yeah.
What about you, Laura Beth? What do you think?
Honestly, it's funny because I had so many siblings, but I'm still gonna say I think I'm the most like my mom. Probably because I was around her so much. I mean, even though I had all the siblings to hang out with, mom was always showing us how to cook some recipe, or she would read us books at night, or just she was very good at talking to all of us individually. Like, I never felt neglected by my mom at all. And, dad worked full time outside the home to support the family, and she worked full time at home as a stay at home mom. So she was always there. So I think not only just like little random habits I picked up on, but also just personality and the way she treats other people and things like that. I think I'm more like her than my dad.
And now you're a mom as well, so
Yeah.
that could be it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, kind of in the same shoes. She was a nurse before she started staying home, and I'm a nurse. So, yeah, a lot of similarities as
Yeah.
far as what we've chosen for our life.
You'd think you'd wanna have, like, the big family, like the one you've been at or that you're in, the one you've been around.
Yeah, I don't know about a number of kids, but I love being from a big family that I want my children to experience that, but I don't know if it'll be on the same level as my parents or not. I mean, we'll see. We're kind of taking it one step at a time. So,
They are on kid number 2.
yeah,
Well, she's about to have kid number
yeah,
2, and their other kid is almost 1,
yeah.
so
So, yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see how this next
Here's
year goes.
2 kids, so we'll see. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it is what I'm saying, but I don't know.
I think even, like, whatever number of kids you have, the plus side is, like, we're not related, but, like, your husband is my cousin, so he comes from a family with a lot of people in it.
Mhm.
We're always all around
It'll
each
always
other.
be a lot.
Yeah, there's always a lot of people everywhere. Uh,
Exactly.
but Haley, do you have a big family outside of obviously you and your parents?
Yeah, so on my dad, he's one of 5. One of his sisters has quite a few kids, and then now her grandkids. It's actually her grandkids. It's the one I was talking about earlier, the cousin I'm about 4 years away from.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a pretty big family on his side, and then on my mom's side, a little bit complicated, but she's actually an only child. But when she came from the Philippines here, she stayed with family, kind of far off family, and they had 3 daughters around her age. So they were like sisters. So I consider them like 3 aunts with uncle, all of them. So that's like a big family now too. And that's bigger than my dad's side, honestly. But so there's pretty good numbers on each side.
Do you guys think that so having a lot of siblings, not having a lot of siblings influenced the way you think about yourself or your level of independence to any extent?
I would say, at least from my perspective, I have always just had like a little bit of independence with just being an only child. I think being around my parents a lot, and just because they're adults and just growing up, I feel like I had to kind of grow up pretty quick just being around adults. So with that kind of comes independence. Not that I had to do everything myself, but just kind of finding my own way, having to like make friends, kind of speaking up for myself. Not that I had to go over other people, but when you're younger, it's just like trying to have them see you as an equal in a way. I just feel like I had to gain a little bit of independence through that and just kind of showing them like I can make my way and seeing obviously that they're like independent adults. That's all I had to like kind of look towards. I didn't have any other like an older sibling to see how they did it. I was kind of like on my own. So just said, hey, these are adults. This is how they do it. I guess I'll be as independent as I can be and do it as well.
That makes sense. I wouldn't have thought about it that way, but that makes sense that you would probably be pretty independent. I don't know if it was necessarily my upbringing or like my situation that made me more independent. I think it's probably more my personality, just because when I think about having so many siblings, it doesn't seem like you would be super independent because you've always got someone to depend on. At 14, I got a job and wanted to make money and save for college. Like I was always planning and stuff. So I wasn't depending on anybody to really get me through to that. I guess part of like the financial side of things that I mentioned, I knew that if I wanted to do something, I was going to have to work hard and get it myself. But yeah, probably also all my siblings, everyone being so different and having different interests. if you wanted to be noticed, you had to work hard for, like, let's say, learning an instrument. Like, you'd have to teach yourself how to play, and then, like, this sounds silly. It sounds like begging for attention, but honestly, it's just like this. If you wanted your parents to know, like, "Hey, look at this new song I learned," you had to, like, show it to them and say, like, "Hey, you wanna see what I've been learning?" Because not that they didn't notice things, but some things, that are just gonna go unnoticed because there's so many children. So I think having to almost vie for attention or have to work your way for something you wanted kind of made more independence.
That's so interesting because just on my my end of things, like you were saying that you have to like kind of prove that like, oh, I liked to play an instrument, like listen to me. On my end, my parents are always like, do you want to play an instrument?
Yeah.
Yes, they're trying to get me almost like out there pushing me to do things. But I think, yeah, because it's just me, they were like, you should try this.
Yeah, that is interesting, like the total different. Yeah, that's cool.
Do you think now that you're a mom, you think differently about like, "Oh, I'm surprised my parents were able to give me even, like, as much attention or care or whatever as they did?" Because
Yeah.
I think when you think about like, "Oh, I wish my parents would've done this or that or whatever," and then you get older and you're like, "How did they even do this at all?" Like
I'm so impressed. I say all the time, like, wow, my mom was super mom. And same with my dad too. Like, I really never felt neglected. People talk about the middle child never getting attention or just doesn't get noticed because they're not the youngest and they're not the oldest. But I never felt that way. Like, I felt like my parents knew what was going on in my life. I felt like they cared, and looking at it now, I'm like, I'm so busy with just the one baby with the second on the way. Sometimes I feel like, man, if there were 3 others crawling around, like, I would be, like, up, over my head, drowning in water. I'm like, "How did my mom do it?" Because she had us all close in age too. So the fact that, they cared about and encouraged our interests and knew what those interests were, I'm like, "Man, they were really on top of things." Like, they really wanted to raise children that loved them and loved others, and I think they did a great job, and I'm so impressed by it now, kind of starting to do that myself or trying to.
would either of you change anything about your experience? Do you wish you had more siblings, less siblings, a medium amount of siblings? What do you guys think?
I think I would in hindsight, I guess it'd be nice to have at least another sibling. I don't know how many. I don't think I would be like too picky. I I mean, I like that I had such a close relationship with my parents. So I really would change that aspect of it if I could. But yeah, I know on my dad's side, one of my cousins has like I think just 5 kids now. And I just know that's like quite like just kind of seeing that even that's like quite a bit of kids and they're all pretty young like, seeing them, like, I don't know if my parents could have handled that. I don't know. If they had 2, that would have probably been enough, just, like, one person just to hang out with, but
Would I
I'm
change
not
anything?
okay, yeah, I don't wanna make it seem like I want you to get rid of your
No.
siblings, like,
Why
pick
don't
which
I
one you
say
like
that?
the
rank
least.
your sibling.
Get rid
Which one out of the 9 would you discard? I as a little kid, we actually used to pray every night that my mom would have another baby after we'd had the 9. Like, we would all pray together as a family at night, and we would always say at the end of the prayer, "And please let mom have another baby." So, as a little kid, I wanted more siblings. Just it was so much fun, and we viewed children as a blessing, and they had so much value, still do. But, now I'm like, "Oh, it's perfect." Like, I would not take any away because I love them all
Right,
so
right.
much. They're all so unique, and I'm just friends with all of them, so I think it's great. Like, I definitely would not change anything now, but as a kid, I was like, "Oh, the more the merrier," you know? We had 15 and I'd be happy. So now I'm like, "Oh, it's perfect. I wouldn't change a thing." But yeah. Definitely wouldn't have had less. It's even though there's a lot of people and we didn't have a lot of money, I still wouldn't change it.
Well, thank you both for being on here. This one I was excited about because I just have one brother, but I think it's so interesting. I mean, from what I gathered from this conversation, you both had obviously very different childhood experiences, but you both think about things in a lot of the same way. So, because I was curious if people on such opposite ends of a spectrum how they would view things, but I mean, you both kind of seem to have a lot of similarities.
Well,
So, yeah. But thank you both for being on.
thanks, Madison.
Thanks, Madison.
Thanks so much again to Haley and Laurabeth for being guests on the show today. If you have a story you want to personally share on the show, want to be read on air, or a topic you'd like to see discussed, find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at JustAPersonPod, or send us an email at justapersonpod@gmail.com. We'll see you next Monday with another new episode.